Part 1. Something enormous has entered our solar system. Those words are not spoken lightly. They are the kind that linger in the air long after the voice has faded, words that press against the limits of comprehension. On September 12, 2025, a light appeared beyond Neptune's orbit, a flare so intense that even hardened astronomers, used to the strange fireworks of the cosmos, found themselves staring in disbelief. It was not a supernova, nor a comet, nor a reflection of the sun's distant rays. It was something else, something that shone with its own kind of purpose. At first, no one believed the data. The Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, registered an ultraviolet burst at the edge of detection, so bright it seemed to mock the sun itself. The initial report classified it as a sensor fault, the kind that occasionally plagues satellites when cosmic rays strike their optics. Yet, 48 hours later, an amateur astronomer in Australia confirmed what the machines had already whispered. Through his modest backyard telescope, he saw a luminous body trailing a vast arc of radiance, a tail wider than 5 full moons, glowing with an energy that no known substance could produce. He logged it, photographed it, and unknowingly named the newest enigma of the human age. C divided by 2025 R2, Swan. At first glance, Swan R2 seemed like any other visitor from the cold void. Perhaps a comet, perhaps debris from a forgotten collision. But almost immediately, something felt wrong. Its brightness did not fade as expected. Instead, it pulsed. Its reflectivity, or albedo, exceeded that of any known ice, rock, or metallic alloy. And when astronomers modeled its motion, they found a trajectory that refused to obey the solar system's gravitational script. It did not merely fall toward the sun, it maneuvered. Imagine for a moment standing on the dark plains beneath Neptune's long shadow. Beyond that infinite blue horizon, a second dawn begins to rise. Not the sun, but another source of light, distant yet deliberate, gleaming with a cold intelligence. The cosmos seems to pause, as if aware that something unprecedented has arrived. And in that stillness, a question forms, the kind that rewrites the boundaries between wonder and fear. What exactly has entered our solar system? Across observatories from Hawaii to Chile, from Japan to South Africa, the same debate unfolded. Was this a natural interstellar wanderer, a frozen relic of creation's first breath? Or was it something else entirely? Something constructed, perhaps, to arrive here? The question was audacious, yet the evidence demanded audacity. Swan R2's ultraviolet emissions were rhythmic, almost musical. Its path through space traced elegant curves that no random trajectory should follow. It seemed to know where it was going. To scientists, the cosmos has always been a dialogue between order and chaos, chance and design. For centuries, comets were the messengers of change, harbingers of awe and superstition. But in the rational age, we learned to tame them with mathematics. We charted their orbits, predicted their returns, measured their tails. They became part of the predictable machinery of the heavens, until now. Because in the year 2025, the pattern broke. Within the span of only a few months, 2 interstellar bodies, 3I, Atlas, and Swan R2, both entered our solar system. The odds of that happening by chance are beyond comprehension. Atlas came first, smaller and less brilliant, but already strange. Its trajectory slowed as if resisting gravity. Its surface reflected more light than any object its size should. Some dismissed it as coincidence. Others whispered of coordination. Then, from the opposite side of the galaxy, Swan R2 arrived, luminous, immense, and uncomfortably precise. When scientists overlaid their trajectories, they discovered something that sent a shiver through every research center on Earth. The 2 paths converged, not perfectly, but close enough that the distance between their perihelia, their points nearest the sun, was no more than 50 million kilometers. Cosmically, that is the width of a human hair. Both objects would reach their closest approach to the sun within days of each other, then disappear behind its blinding corona. Two luminous strangers, traveling from opposite ends of the galaxy, meeting in the same celestial corridor at the same moment in time. Coincidence is a word science uses when it runs out of explanations, but nature, elegant though it is, does not choreograph with such symmetry. Intelligence does. And so a new hypothesis was born, that 3I Atlas was not an accident, but a forerunner. A probe, perhaps, preparing the way. Swan R2, larger and far more radiant, might then be the main arrival, following the scout across the interstellar sea. If that is true, then what we are witnessing is not celestial randomness, but intention, the slow unfolding of a plan written in the mathematics of orbit and light. Imagine, if you will, a civilization older than our world, sending emissaries, not in the span of days or centuries, but in cycles measured by the heartbeat of galaxies, each object a step, each orbit a syllable in a cosmic language we are only now beginning to hear. The deeper we looked, the less sense it made. Its composition, its luminosity, its impossible path, all defied the known laws of physics. Swan R2 shimmered not with reflected sunlight, but with something intrinsic, as though energy itself flowed through its form. Astronomers measured its spectrum and found materials unknown to any natural body. Metallic reflections of nickel, cobalt, and ionized carbon arranged in precise ratios. The tail, rather than dispersing dust, seemed to channel plasma, guiding it as if through invisible conduits. The universe does not make mistakes, but it often makes mysteries, and Swan R2 has become the greatest of them all. What began as a distant light at the edge of our cosmic neighborhood has now become a question that pierces the very fabric of our understanding. What if this is not a comet, not an asteroid, not even an accident of celestial mechanics, but something built, something ancient, something that has been here before? Beyond Neptune, a second sun glows, patient and deliberate. And somewhere between science and silence, the universe is waiting for us to ask the right question. Part 2. For days, the world's telescopes turned toward the edge of the solar system, their lenses glimmering like mechanical eyes, wide with wonder. Swan R2, once a whisper on the outskirts of astronomical data, had become the central figure of every discussion, every late-night debate, every quiet moment in dim observatories where the hum of machinery mingled with the pulse of the stars. It was brighter now, more radiant than any known object of its type, and its light carried something almost unsettling. Not chaotic, not wild, but steady, controlled. A pulse, faint but exact, like a heartbeat echoing through vacuum. At first, NASA treated the anomaly cautiously, assigning it to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for orbital analysis. The European Space Agency joined days later, cross-referencing data from the Solar Orbiter and Bepi-Colombo missions. The results they returned did not calm the growing unease. Swan R2's orbital pattern was not hyperbolic, as every comet before it had been. Instead, it traced an ellipse, a bound orbit. In plain terms, this meant it was not leaving. Every object entering the solar system from interstellar space, from Oumuamua to Borisov, had swung past the sun and vanished forever. Swan R2, however, had folded itself into the gravitational web, circling the sun as if it had chosen to remain. The mathematics of that orbit were terrifyingly precise. Its period was calculated at 22,554 years. Exact to the decimal. Astronomers know that such long-period orbits decay. They shift, wobble, perturb. They do not remain fixed across millennia. Yet Swan R2's orbital inclination and eccentricity were immutable. It was as if an invisible hand corrected it every few seconds, applying infinitesimal impulses to maintain perfect alignment. Gravity alone could not account for it. There had to be another force, guidance, or propulsion. Spectrographic data deepened the mystery. When the Hubble Space Telescope recorded Swan R2's emissions, the ultraviolet signature revealed structured peaks at consistent intervals, showing coherent electromagnetic modulation. In natural phenomena, light curves fluctuate irregularly, like the shimmer of fire. Swan R2's, however, repeated with digital precision. 22 pulses per cycle, each lasting precisely 1.2 seconds. When scientists at Caltech transformed the light data into audio, the room fell silent. It sounded like code. The composition baffled material scientists. Instead of volatile ices, as with comets, the reflection spectra indicated a metallic lattice, primarily nickel-cobalt alloy doped with ionized carbon. The surface temperature did not correspond to its proximity to the Sun. It remained constant, as though regulated by an internal mechanism. Even stranger, the object's interaction with the solar wind contradicted physics. Normally, solar protons slam into comets, vaporizing material and forming long, luminous tails. Swan R2 deflected them. The solar wind bent around it as if encountering a magnetic shield. To produce such a bubble, an energy output exceeding 10,000 gigawatts per second would be required, equivalent to more than 10 times Earth's total electrical generation. That energy was not being absorbed. It was being emitted. The realization struck slowly, like dawn over a frozen horizon. Swan R2 was not a passive body drifting through space. It was active. Its tail, once thought to be vapor, was plasma, confined, guided, possibly manipulated. The rhythmic light emissions were not random outgassing. They were a signal, a structured broadcast of energy and information. The universe's silence was breaking, not with sound, but with order. As data accumulated, independent teams around the world began to collaborate in secret networks, exchanging unfiltered readings away from bureaucratic oversight. Observatories in Hawaii, Chile, and the Canary Islands triangulated Swan R2's position and confirmed an impossible anomaly. Microvariations in its velocity correlated precisely with the ultraviolet pulses. Every time a light surge occurred, the object shifted, minutely, by fractions of a meter per second, but always in the same direction. It was maneuvering, correcting its course through directed impulse. It was not being moved by the solar wind. It was using it. By the end of September, the evidence was undeniable. The scientific vocabulary that once explained the cosmos, comet, asteroid, body, began to falter. Swan R2 behaved like a vessel. NASA convened an emergency consortium with ESA, JAXA, and the Indian Space Research Organization to address a question that had no precedent. If this was not natural, then what was it? Dr. Helen Morrow of the Goddard Space Flight Center presented a model showing electromagnetic field alignments across the object's surface, resembling grid-like nodes consistent with energy distribution systems. "It's a self-regulating plasma envelope," she explained. "Something is maintaining thermal equilibrium and charge balance. That means containment. That means design." For weeks, the media speculated wildly, but the public saw only fragments. Official statements used careful language: anomalous interstellar object, high albedo reflector, unusual spectral readings. Yet inside the scientific community, the tone shifted from curiosity to reverence. Swan R2 was being studied like a relic of unknown origin, perhaps even an artifact, a creation, not a coincidence. One discovery in particular cemented that notion. The Very Large Array in New Mexico recorded low-frequency electromagnetic bursts from the object that repeated every 22 seconds. When decoded into binary, they represented ratios corresponding exactly to Swan R2's orbital parameters, its period, inclination, and eccentricity. The signal was describing itself. It was, in effect, sending a cosmic identification message. I am here, and this is what I am. Mathematicians noticed something else. The number 22 appeared again and again. 22 pulses, 22 seconds, 22,000 years. It was as if the universe itself was counting with intention. The coincidence became too structured to ignore. Dr. Vikram Desai of ISRO proposed that the number might represent a harmonic resonance, a frequency key linking electromagnetic emissions to orbital stability. If Swan R2 is maintaining an artificial orbit, he said, then this modulation could be its correction protocol, a feedback loop that keeps it synchronized with solar dynamics. That hypothesis implied something staggering. Swan R2 might not merely be a probe, it could be an autonomous machine capable of self-repair and orbital maintenance, a technology older than civilization itself, operating across epochs, a system so advanced it mimics natural law perfectly, until it chooses not to. Meanwhile, another pattern emerged. The smaller body, 3I Atlas, had begun to emit its own low-frequency pulses before vanishing behind the Sun. Both objects shared not only similar spectral traits but identical timing ratios. They were synchronized. Two entities from opposite sides of the galaxy, communicating through light, converging near the Sun in perfect coordination. Coincidence by now was no longer a reasonable term. Then came the flare. On October 2, 2025, the Solar Dynamics Observatory detected an ultraviolet burst emanating from the region near the Sun's western limb. It lasted exactly 22 seconds. The signature did not match a solar flare. It was too orderly, too symmetric. The pulse was followed by a faint but coherent radio emission, a waveform so mathematically clean that it could not have originated from any natural process. The frequency, 22 GHz, precisely the same frequency used by human deep space communication arrays. It was as though Swan R2 was speaking in our language, or one eerily parallel to it. The world did not hear about it. The transmission was classified within hours, but those who analyzed it in real time spoke of its haunting beauty, a hum that rose and fell like the rhythm of breath, resonating in perfect harmonic intervals. "It's not noise," said Dr. Morrow. "It's intention made audible." As days passed, instruments across the globe detected disturbances in the magnetosphere. At first, faint ripples, then a pattern. Every 22 minutes, a measurable oscillation appeared simultaneously in detectors from Finland to Chile. Earth itself seemed to be responding. It was as if the planet was being scanned or tuned. No damage occurred, no interference, just a subtle rhythmic pulse that left instruments humming faintly for seconds after each wave. The question that haunted every researcher was no longer whether Swan R2 was artificial, but why it was here. Some proposed that it was a relic, a vessel from a civilization so ancient that even their memory had turned to myth. Others speculated about a self-replicating probe, a von Neumann machine, one of countless emissaries traversing galaxies on missions beyond comprehension. Still others whispered of a long cycle of observation, that Swan R2's orbit might have brought it near Earth during the end of the last ice age, when humanity was young, and that perhaps ancient myths of blazing sky visitors were not metaphors, but memories. If that is true, then this is not a first encounter. It is a continuation. The implications stretch beyond science. To find a functioning artifact orbiting the Sun in a stable 22,000-year loop would mean that our solar system has been visited, mapped, and perhaps monitored for tens of millennia. Such precision cannot exist without intent. Every orbit, every pulse, every electromagnetic whisper becomes a line in a cosmic script. Swan R2 is writing something across time, and we are only now learning to read. As the object approached perihelion, its nearest point to the Sun, all observation ceased. For weeks it would pass behind the solar glare, invisible to instruments, unreachable by radio. Two bodies, Atlas and Swan R2, both vanishing simultaneously into that blinding veil. Astronomers call this moment solar conjunction. But never before has conjunction felt so much like suspense. Something is happening behind the sun, unseen and silent. Before the blackout, one final transmission was captured. A 22-second pulse, structured and unwavering. It emanated from the same coordinates where both objects had converged. The waveform was divided into 22 distinct harmonics, forming a perfect mathematical symmetry. When decoded, it produced a repeating binary ratio, 1, 0, 1, 0, the simplest of all possible messages. It was a pattern older than language, older than thought itself. A signal meant to be recognized by any mind capable of logic. A greeting or a countdown. We do not yet know which. Now, as the days unfold in waiting, humanity holds its collective breath. The solar wind hums, the instruments watch, and somewhere beyond the burning face of the sun, two unknown objects orbit in perfect synchrony. The sky is quiet, but the silence feels alive. Perhaps they are aligning. Perhaps they are communicating. Or perhaps, as some now fear, they are preparing. Every generation of science faces a revelation that forces it to rewrite its understanding of reality. For us, that revelation may already be here. A luminous visitor, deliberate and patient, looping endlessly around the heart of our system, whispering in numbers that defy coincidence. Swan R2 is not a comet. It is not a rock or a fragment of frozen gas. It is something constructed, something enduring, something that remembers. And if its orbit is indeed self-correcting, then it is not merely following a path, it is fulfilling a purpose. Whatever Swan R2 is, it is awake, and somewhere behind the sun, in the blinding furnace of creation, it is waiting for its next move. Part 3. When historians of the future look back upon this year, they may call it the moment when human perception shifted forever. But to understand the magnitude of what Swan R2 represents, one must step back, not in distance, but in time. Every great discovery carries a lineage, a thread woven through the centuries of curiosity and persistence that define our species. The people who now study this luminous visitor are not merely astronomers. They are heirs to a legacy that began when humanity first looked upward and asked the oldest of all questions, what else is out there? Among those who have devoted their lives to answering it stands Dr. Elena Varga, astrophysicist at the European Southern Observatory, a woman whose calm voice and unflinching patience have become symbols of reason in a time of cosmic unease. Born in Prague, she grew up under skies veiled with city light, yet her fascination began the night her father pointed out the faint smear of the Milky Way beyond the rooftops. She would later say that even through that haze, she could feel the immensity behind it, the heartbeat of something vast. Decades later, when she first received the data stream from the Chilean telescopes showing Swan R2's rhythmic pulses, she said she felt the same sensation, the sense that the universe itself was speaking, and she had finally learned enough to listen. Dr. Varga was among the first to notice the temporal correlation between the object's energy bursts and the ancient orbital cycles of known celestial bodies. In her analysis, the 22,554-year period of Swan R2 aligned closely with precession patterns encoded in humanity's oldest monuments. The Great Pyramid's shafts, the megalithic alignments at Karnak, the stone enclosures of Göbekli Tepe, each seemed to trace celestial events tied to an epoch roughly equal to Swan R2's orbital return. It was as if our ancestors without telescopes or satellites had remembered something they once saw blazing across their skies. Whether through legend or calculation, they left markers, as though to say, this light will return. If that interpretation holds, then Swan R2 is not an unexpected visitor. It is a returning one. It may have swept past the newborn civilizations of the late Ice Age, its brilliance immortalized in stories of gods descending in fire. of heavenly ships that taught humankind the measure of the stars. Ancient myths from Sumer to the Andes speak of luminous beings who came from the sky, leaving knowledge, order, and awe. Perhaps these tales were not born from imagination alone, but from memory, distorted, reverent recollections of a cosmic event our ancestors could not explain. In that sense, Swan R2 becomes more than a scientific phenomenon. It becomes a mirror. It reflects the continuity of wonder that binds us to every generation before us. For as long as we have existed, we have searched the heavens for meaning, for reassurance that we are not alone. And now, as this artificial sun traces its flawless path around the heart of our solar system, the possibility emerges that we were never alone to begin with. Yet science must stand upon evidence, not mythology. As Swan R2 continues its hidden passage behind the sun, data from its earlier observations are being reanalyzed with unprecedented precision. The James Webb Space Telescope, before its scheduled observation blackout, captured mid-infrared imagery showing temperature gradients that suggested an underlying structure, not chaotic or organic, but geometric, bands of heat distributed evenly across the surface, resembling the framework of panels or segments. Some analysts have compared it to a Dyson fragment, a fragmentary component of a stellar energy collector, though smaller by astronomical scales. The possibility raises an unsettling question. Could Swan R2 be a remnant of stellar engineering, a surviving piece of technology designed to harvest or manipulate energy from suns? If so, then its self-correcting orbit and rhythmic transmission may serve as maintenance protocols, a continuing function long after its creators vanished, a ghost of technology still carrying out instructions imprinted millions of years ago. The thought is both humbling and terrifying, that a machine might endure across epochs, waiting in silence, loyal only to the laws written within its design. Dr. Varga's colleague, Professor Julian Adebayo from the University of Cape Town, proposed an equally compelling theory, that Swan R2 may not be a singular object but a node in a network, a beacon, among others yet unseen. He points to the statistical anomaly of two interstellar objects, 3I Atlas and Swan R2, arriving within the same temporal window. If they are part of a lattice, he explained, then we may be witnessing a reactivation sequence, a synchronization event repeating every 22 millennia. His model suggests that Swan R2 could emit a periodic energy burst meant to awaken or calibrate distant counterparts scattered across interstellar space. In this view, our solar system becomes a relay point in a web stretching between stars, a filament of communication older than recorded history. Others, more cautious, urge restraint. They argue that the allure of intelligent design must not eclipse the discipline of empirical method. But even they cannot dismiss the evidence. Swan R2's orbit refuses decay. Its emissions defy randomness. Its light curves recite a sequence too perfect to be chance. For all practical purposes, it behaves like a machine. And if it is one, then somewhere, at some time, there was an engineer. If that is true, then humanity stands on the threshold of understanding not only that life exists beyond Earth, but that intelligence once moved among the stars with capabilities we have barely begun to imagine. And yet, amid the exhilaration, there is a deeper emotion, one that hums quietly beneath every data set, every spectral line. It is not fear, not quite. It is recognition, a whisper within our collective consciousness that we have seen this light before. In the weeks since the solar conjunction began, the scientific community has lived in suspense. Every antenna listens. Every sensor waits for the moment Swan R2 reemerges from the glare. When it does, the next phase of the investigation will begin. Proposals for dedicated missions are already being drafted. Autonomous probes equipped with plasma spectrometers and magnetic interferometers to approach the object directly. The concept echoes the Voyager spirit, humanity reaching outward once more. daring to touch the unknown. But this time, the target is not a planet or a moon. It is something that might look back. The engineering challenges are immense. Swan R2's environment is turbulent, wrapped in electromagnetic vortices powerful enough to fry unshielded circuits. Its magnetic field fluctuates unpredictably, suggesting a form of controlled plasma containment. To approach it safely, any probe would need layered shielding and adaptive AI navigation, technology we are only beginning to develop. Yet despite the risks, the desire is overwhelming. To study it up close is to confront a truth that could redefine civilization. Perhaps, though, the greatest revelation lies not in the mechanics, but in the message. If the 22-pulse signal is indeed a transmission, its structure implies intent to be understood. It uses simple harmonic sequences, prime intervals, binary modulation, a universal syntax recognizable to any species capable of mathematics. It is not shouting across the void, it is inviting dialogue. A cosmic introduction written in the grammar of logic itself. Some theorists have suggested that the signal is not a message to us, but to itself, a self-referential code ensuring the integrity of its own system. Yet the precision of its frequency, at 22 GHz, identical to human deep space communication bands, raises the haunting possibility that the correspondence is deliberate. It is as though two civilizations separated by incomprehensible distance and time reach the same frequency of thought, the same wavelength of curiosity. Perhaps that convergence is not coincidence at all. Perhaps it is the nature of intelligence, wherever it arises, to find harmony in the same numbers. In this light, Swan R2 ceases to be merely an object of study. It becomes a cosmic mirror, reflecting the essence of inquiry itself. We look at it not just to learn about the universe, but to learn about ourselves, about the part of human nature that seeks order in chaos, meaning in silence, and purpose in the endless dark. It reminds us that every discovery, no matter how alien, begins with a question born from wonder. As the blackout nears its end, the scientific world waits in collective anticipation. Soon, Swan R2 and its counterpart, 3I Atlas, will emerge from behind the solar veil. Instruments will strain to capture the first glimmer, the first pulse of returning light. And when that happens, humanity will stand once again before a threshold of understanding, perhaps facing the greatest revelation in its history. Whether what awaits us is knowledge or humility, creation or confirmation, no one can say. But the universe has already shown its hand, not through destruction, but through design, through beauty written in mathematics. In a way, Swan R2 has already changed us. It has reminded us that science is not merely about answers, but about the courage to face questions that may have none. It has bound together astronomers, physicists, engineers, poets, and dreamers under one shared gaze toward a point of light that defies comprehension yet demands attention. It has rekindled something ancient in us, something primal and luminous, the awareness that we are part of a greater design, whether made by chance or by will. If it is a machine, then it carries the memory of its makers. If it is natural, then it is the universe itself performing an act of impossible artistry. Either way,